On our show with Iuri, we talked about teens having ambivalence. And it was mostly about general ambivalence or apathy or disaffection. But it made me think about ambivalence in the context of change. So, first, as you've grown to understand about me if you listen to our show, I'm going to define ambivalence so that we're all working within the same framework. And I'm going basic here. Ambivalence just means having mixed or conflicting feelings about something. But we talk about this a lot in the stages of change model because it can affect how willing or motivated someone is to make adjustments in their life. So let me just start with like a 60-second overview of the stages of change model. And here are the stages of change. First is pre-contemplation, where you're not even aware of a problem behavior, or someone mentions it as such, but you honestly don't think it's problematic. So you can see how there'd be very little motivation to change in this stage. Why would you? There's no problem, right? Then comes contemplation, where you start acknowledging that maybe there's a problem and you start thinking about maybe making changes, or at least you're open to the possibility of making changes because you see a potential need. So then you enter the preparation stage, where you decide that, yes, I do see a problem here and I feel ready to take action about it, which leads to the action stage, where you actually start making the changes. And finally, maintenance, where basically in order to sustain the progress that you've made, you just stay committed to whatever you've been doing. And then I should mention there's also a termination stage where let's just say you basically conquered the issue and it's not a problem anymore. And if we want to think about it this way, it's very similar to the stages of grief because these aren't linear. Because our motivation, commitment, or life circumstances can fluctuate, we can move in and out of different stages, and that's okay. Now, I think most of us can relate to having personal behavior goals, but not doing anything about it. And I say that personally, like reducing our screen time, better sleep habits, healthier eating, you know. But the truth is, sometimes we're perfectly fine not getting what we say we want. Sometimes we don't want something bad enough to work for it, even though it feels like we do. There's so many goals I could name for myself that I should really just end the sentence with in theory, because I'm not actually making any behavioral or emotional changes that would get me to that goal. Or, this happens for me too, I'm making a sporadic effort, which gives the impression that I'm working towards the change, but I'm certainly not going to meet my goals at that rate. So, why am I talking about this? Well, first, it's generally helpful to know about these stages and take yourself through them to see where you're at with any given problem. Secondly, it can help us build empathy or patience for people in our lives who aren't ready to change. That's a very real thing and it can be frustrating, but if we can understand that process a little bit better, it can help. And finally, it might spark some motivation for accountability, which is something I'm eager to promote anytime I can. I see a lot of people sit in therapy, not ready to change or ambivalent about changing something. Even though they want to, in theory, they say they want to, they might even be in some kind of distress because of this issue. So when we talk about their readiness for change, it can help support them in taking action steps, or at least sort out how much of a problem this problem really is in their view. And having worked with plenty of court-ordered folks, I know that there are times when it feels like everyone around you is telling you there's a problem, but you just don't agree. Or you kind of see what they're saying, but you don't want to address it, or it doesn't feel like that big a deal. Or you do want to make a change, but you don't know where to start. You can see how, depending on where you are on that broad spectrum, there are different types of support and perspectives to take, right? So today's assignment is simply to think about a behavior or a thought pattern that you or someone you love has identified as a problem for you, and think about what stage of change you're in. Being honest about how willing or ready you are to change will help you narrow down how to proceed. And I happen to have a lot of tangible resources on how to do that if you do want to proceed. So please email us at theunrelatingpodcast@gmail.com if you want to come on the show and we can discuss and work it out. And as always, follow us on our socials so that we can interact with you.